So I didn't know that Oregon had a big wine country.
Oh yeah.
I didn't know that.
I mean, I don't know how many
you hear a lot about
they have.
You hear a lot about
Oregon,
California.
but, yeah.
But
I'll
so
tell
Oregon
you,
have vineyards?
a drive through there is amazing. It is an exploding industry over there.
Really?
Yeah.
Really?
Okay.
I mean, there are vineyards being planted everywhere, and they have a very diverse growing regions. You know, you've got the Willamette Valley, and then down south where it's really hot. It was 107 degrees down there.
And you can grow grapes in that kind of weather?
They love to grow in that kind of weather. You know,
wow.
I mean, part of
which is why you don't see very many grapes grown here, because we don't generally get to 107 very often and for very long.
Yeah, that's the length of the season.
Yeah,
you know, they
our
have,
growing season is not nearly.
The Willamette Valley in the United States is probably the premier Pinot Noir growing region.
Is it?
And,
Now, does it take a lot of irrigation? Does it take a lot of water to grow grapes? You would think so, because the grape itself seems to have a lot of liquid in it, obviously, so you can make wine. But
you would think so, but that's not the case, Scott. They really starve the grapes of water.
do they? Because I know in that part of the world, water is always a big issue.
And there's probably some big chemistry about how the moisture content causes the sugars to develop a different way or something, and it probably involves a chemistry type of thing.
Well, and there's a lot of chemistry going on over there this year
Sure.
because of the spring. They also, like we had here in Missoula, a cold, long spring that never turned into summer, so they've got some challenges. So they're getting ready once the grapes start to develop. They're going to be watching those and actually pruning the vines and getting rid of some of the bunches of fruit so they can concentrate the flavor and the sugars into the better bunches of grapes on the vines. So there's a real science to it.
So when the weather's bad and they risk getting a frost, which obviously would be devastating, do they do like the Keanu Reeves movie, A Walk in the Clouds, and they put the big butterfly wings on and light the fires and move through the grapes and circulate the heat?
You better believe they do that kind of stuff.
I don't think so. I think that's all Hollywood stuff.
So,
I mean, when else does a candy salesman fall in love with a woman who happens to own like the biggest vineyard on the planet?
Yeah, frost is not a good word, you know.
Well, that's true. Now, you said you went to some tasting day. You had a great wine tasting here at the 501 Lounge last... When was that?
We had an amazing tasting. It was on the 11th, I believe.
And you got another one coming up, which is what we wanted to let people know about.
At the Lowell Creek Steakhouse on the 26th, and I
All
believe the time is 6 to 9, but watch our fan pages and blogs. So
okay.
More event calendar information in the next day or two there.
So some of the things you learned when you headed on your travels is you were talking to us a little bit about terroirs. I don't even know what that is. Terroirs.
Terroirs. It's a French term with almost without meaning, but it embraces the origin of wine.
There are a lot of French terms almost without meaning.
Well, you know, the French are really smart, and I'll tell you, it's an objective way to look at wines, and does the grapes from that vineyard rise to the characteristics of what that land should produce. So it's a very good way to approach wines.
Okay.
So do people need to be concerned about that, or is it just an interesting tidbit?
No, we're going to learn a lot more about that with the WineGuyMike blog, and on the Ranch fan page there'll be links to that. I'm going to talk a lot more about that so people can approach a wine on a shelf objectively and know from that region what that bottle of wine should be. You know, once they pop the cork, then it's all subjective. You know, does it reach those standards in your mind?
Right.
Everybody's palate's a little bit different, but it gives you a good base place to start from.
Okay.
So it's if you go to the store and you see beef, and beef is from Montana or Texas, you go, I bet that's pretty good beef.
Yeah.
If it's from Maine, you might go, well, I've not known that Maine is a big beef producer.
Right. Same thing as if you go to Nebraska and you want fresh mussels.
Sure. Well,
maybe
hang
not.
on a minute. Yeah.
And terroir really, that's a great point, represents beef as well. What type of grains and grasses are those cattle fed?
Yeah.
And what type of flavors and nuances should that beef have? It's the same with cheeses, it's the same with wines, so we're really going to explore that a lot more in a simple way.
Well, and you're hitting on something that hunters will tell you too, is depending on where they kill their game, they can tell you that there's a definite distinction in flavor of game that's down, down in the cornfields versus.
It's a great point, Paula.
Yeah.
So it definitely deserves delving into a little bit more than even we can give on the segment this morning, but you need to link over from our Facebook page to the blog, and we do have a couple of winners today, Jessica Cato and Patty Erling. Big fans of WineGuyMike and the wine segment here at 107 The Ranch, so we're going to hook them up with those gift certificates.
Yep, we've got one to a Lowell Creek Steakhouse and then one to Grizzly Liquor.
I'm going to put in an early request for next week, Mike. I'd like to talk about sangria. because it's been so hot and it's so refreshing, and I want to know from you the best wines, both reds and whites, to make a good sangria. And if you've got a good recipe, I want you to share it with us.
I'll have some good recipes, and I've got some great ideas.
Aren't you going to talk about?
Bring a jug in if you want.
She earlier was talking.
Oh yeah, we'll have some mornings. There's morning sangria.
Well, that and my fledgling wine shave ice business I need to talk to you about as well, because it's just been so hot.
So hot, we were thinking wine shave ice.
The snow cone.
Yeah.
The wine snow cone.
Exactly, the wine granita.
It's funny, it came up when I was in Oregon.
Yeah, I bet at 107.
Nice. See,
I
that's
bet
good.
at 107 degrees.
So the moral of the story today is, if you're at Grizzly Liquor and you're looking at the wine, all the wines there and everything else, if you see something from Oregon, it's probably pretty good.
They've got some great wines on our blog and the fan page. There's about 5 of them. The wine flight tasting that we had at the tasting last week. These are great representations of our topic, terroir, and they should look at these and they'll learn the information they need to make choices for their whites or red selections at Grizzly Liquor.
Good call.
And Summer Sangria next week on the show. So send your questions via our Facebook page or to WineGuyMike, and we'll get some more winners for those great gift certificates to Grizzly Liquor and Lola Creek Steakhouse. Right.